Hi to all of my basketball friends in Australia, and particularly in the National Basketball League, but everyone in Australia that's a basketball person, of which I'm very pleased to say we converse freely these days on Facebook, or as freely as I can. And so just looking recently at what's been happening over the last couple of years in the National League has drawn more and more attention to where we're going. And now, with the Women's National League losing television coverage and the ABC withdrawing that, we now have the ludicrous situation where we have possibly the second strongest women's competition in the world, with superb talent, superb players all over the country, now cut out of television in Australia, and wondering where they're going to go next, and that has to be rectified. And that started me looking seriously at what's going on in the National League right now. I think over the last year or so I've seen a terrific development again of teams. There's no doubt in the world that the Perth program is fantastic and has been built up over a number of years. There's quite an amount of jealousies, it seems, out there. I pick up enough little comments that seem to be quite negative about Perth, whereas I think we should be screaming about the fantastic success of Perth. Irrespective of where you are in Australia, it's great that the Perth program is succeeding at the level that it is over there. Then you're looking at what's happening in New Zealand, and the strength of the program that New Zealand has created, the talent that they brought in and developed, and of course the leaps and bounds in New Zealand basketball. I remember we came over, I think around 1990, 91, and with our NBL team, and were able to beat the New Zealand team. That's not likely to happen too much anymore with the way basketball has developed there. So the New Zealand program is a rock steady program. So you've got Perth and you've got New Zealand. Sydney has steadied the ship, and the management people there, the way that they've gone about the games this year, the promotions, and particularly the way the Sydney team has poured themselves back into the local community, the young talent that they've got there, the aggressive recruiting. Sydney has turned, I think, again, a positive corner, but still hasn't been able to fill the stadium. And I believe that there's a problem coming up now that Sydney Entertainment Centre is going to go, being torn down, and which will put this team again now back out to Homebush, and that will really create some very, very serious problems for the amount of money that team can raise. Then you continue to move, and you've got the teams that are starting to struggle. But when you're looking, so now you've got at least 3 linchpin teams, and Melbourne United this year. I was very wary about Melbourne United. The philosophy behind it, when you've had a club like Melbourne Tigers that the league was, beholding too early, that were a pretty ordinary team for quite a few years, but stayed the path, and watch young Andrew Gaze develop through the ranks, and then that team itself gradually grew stronger and stronger along with Andrew. But again, it's the history of your game. It's like throwing Collingwood out of the football. I mean, it just seems to me something that you wouldn't do. And in most sports, I think we've done a lousy job in basketball in Australia for a long time at respecting our heritage. We're trying to get a little better at it over recent years. With some of the Hall of Fame ceremonies, it's been wonderful to hear some of the people who have been admitted, but we've done a terrible job at promoting where our sports come from, even to the extent that when you do bring some youngsters at times now to the United States, they can walk into a building like Kansas, which to me was just still awesome. It's where some of the most famous people in the world of basketball, the creator of the game, was there. Wilt Chamberlain was there. It's just such a storied program all the way through, and the players think to themselves, oh, look at this building, it's really an old building, and look at the seating and stuff in this building. It breathes basketball, when you see those people in the first game of the season all join arms behind their back and sing the school song. I mean, it tingles your spine. We got to do a better job at that. Think about the National League today. Just think about the National League today and the number of players in the last 10 years alone, men and women, who have represented their state at national level competition just in the last 10 years. Now, if you want to go back another 10 to 20 years before that, think of all of those people and their children who have either now represented the state. The numbers would be astronomical. If we were to get 1/10 of those people in each state we played in, we would fill every building. Why are we not doing that? Why has that not happened? I think because we lost direction. The National Basketball League, we were playing in front of 14 and 15,000 people in 1986. In the early 90s, the Perth Entertainment Centre, the Sydney Entertainment Centre, Boondall up there in Brisbane, it was magnificent. You had buildings with 10, 12,000 people packed to the rafters, excitement non-stop, and we did it to ourselves. We imploded. You know, we stepped on a lot of toes, basketball did, because we came up so rapidly and we put a lot of other sports a little bit offside. But those of us that went out there and pursued close relationships, particularly with Australian rules football, and I spoke to nearly every Australian rules club. I spoke to them in Adelaide, I spoke to them in Melbourne. We wanted to establish our credibility and show who we were in the sport. So, looking at it from the point of view that all of a sudden, I received a phone call saying, you know, we've got a few problems in the league and you've got a lot of ideas, so we'd like you to come down here and get heavily involved with the National Basketball League and see if we can take another giant step forward. And so if that phone call had have come through, I would have said, yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that. And this is where I'd start. You know, I'll fly in the first week in January. I want to meet with the CEO, the current Brett McTavish from the National Basketball League, who is at the moment holding up, I would imagine, quite a few loose ends, both involved with Perth and involved with the keeping the NBL moving forward in a positive way. And the most important meeting I would want to have after I've had that meeting is to try and sit down with Anthony Moore, the new head of Basketball Australia. It's about time that the National Basketball League was acknowledged by Basketball Australia as the jewel in the crown, and the Women's National Basketball League. They should be the jewels in the crown for Australian basketball. That's where they should stand, and they should be promoting the National Basketball League through all of their state leagues, all of their state associations, as the place, as the ultimate goal to lead their players into. That's what they want. That's what we should do. The relationship with Basketball Australia should be just a fantastic relationship where we are the primary league, where we're trying to encourage so many youngsters to strive for the top because they can play in our national league. And to be a National Basketball League, it tells me that we need the ACT, that's the Australian capital. They're no longer in the league. They should be back in the league, and they should be back in the league rapidly. We need Tasmania. We want Hobart in the league. We don't need a team that travels all over Tasmania. They can go and play some games away if they wanted to do that in Launceston and some places where they can get reasonably good crowds, etc. But you want to build up Hobart. And so to do that, you'd approach the casino. It's a logical step. Go for broke. Get the casino heavily involved in promotion and marketing throughout the country and internationally with guests that come there, etc. But get people involved at the top level again and build that franchise down there. They need to come in quickly. And of course, Brisbane need to be in there next year. If we want the league to start prospering, we've got to get Brisbane back into that league as a focal point. The first thing I'd do up there is talk to the people that are interested in the consortium and get Brian Curl, who coached up there in Brisbane, helped run the whole management of the process when we got it up to 14 and 15,000 people, has an impeccable background as an Olympic assistant coach to Olympic teams, as coach of national championship teams in the National League, as a player in the National League. Brian, just impeccable potential, and nobody knows Brisbane better than Brian, and everybody in Queensland knows Brian. If you bring Brian Curl into the fold, whether it's as the senior consultant or preferably somebody such as the general manager of a new Brisbane franchise, then that Brisbane franchise will thrive and prosper. I don't believe that any of the franchises will thrive and prosper without the active, full support of Basketball Australia. Now, if Basketball Australia don't want to fully support the league, then nobody is interested in how good and how talented we can be other than Australia becoming a feeder for the United States, Europe and anywhere else that wants talent, because there's no other outlet for them in Australia if we want them to stay there. If we want this to work, we have to raise our expectations above the mediocre that's being looked at the moment. What we're trying to do is limit salaries, points on players, a point system on players. You can select players based on their points average. I don't want to upset too many people at the top levels or whatever that made this decision, but that's right up there with amongst the dumbest decisions I've seen. It's not as dumb as the decision to change the season. That was the most stupid thing that we ever did in Australian basketball, and there were about 2 or 3 of us that opposed it vigorously. The main one I remember, unfortunately, was the late Michael Wroblewski. And why do you think Michael, who was very intelligent and started the Sydney franchise virtually from nothing and played in arenas with 300 and 400 people and gradually out to Homebush and couldn't fill Homebush, we put on a pre-season made-for-television event where we used to get everybody that came in to only sit in one section directly opposite the TV cameras because we couldn't afford to have them sit around the building. We wouldn't have anybody looking like they were there on television. And then he filled that building, and then he moved to the entertainment centre, and then he filled that building. He took teams to the finals. He changed the way we thought in so many other aspects in the game. Michael and I were the first people that put the whole tournament on by ourselves, contacting the Sky Television people or whomever it was at the time now, and televised every game in the pre-season classic. The goal of the pre-season classic of mine was to bring all of the teams together under one roof for 4 or 5 days, culminating in a magnificent final series, but have them all there for the first week before the season was going to open in this tournament, so as we could bring media in from all around the country, so we could put on a showcase, state-of-the-art event where new imports would be able to be all interviewed by media from one end of the country to the other. That was the goal. That lasted about 2 years. And then it got watered down and start dividing it up and we'll play it in divisions in different sections. That was not the purpose, just to have a pre-season tournament. The idea was to have something that was going to expose the Australian talent, the American talent, prior to the season starting and give stories to media people throughout the country. Showcase our sport in a highlighted way and invite members of the media that don't follow basketball to be our guests and come along. So that fell apart. And then we changed seasons. And what happened? Well, we should have all known when Mike Wroblewski said, "Goodbye, I'm out of the league." Michael didn't walk away because he couldn't make any money on it or it wasn't going to be successful. Michael walked away because he knew what was going to happen. It was a recipe for failure. Now, we're doing what we're doing and the way that the season is. My reasons for wanting to move back, switch the seasons back, is because we're playing when the rest of the world isn't. It gives us a chance to keep our Australian talent at home and still allows those players that are good enough to pick up teams in Europe and go play in Spain, go play wherever you want to, because our basketball season is now summer in Australia and it's winter in the rest of the world. Go find your outlets. But the rest of the time, good quality players could come play in Australia from overseas against the cream of Australian talent in a dynamite Australian league. How we thought up of let's put some sort of restrictions on how much talent we can have in a team, that seems to me to be just crazy. So you've got, right now, a team could budget for about 4 players or 5 players that comprise your starting 5 and pay everybody else peanuts. And how can you do that in a professional league? How can you ask players to play for a relatively small amount of money and survive and give their loyalty to the National Basketball League? And as soon as the league ends, what do they do? What are they going to do then? You can't branch them out into your junior programs because you've contracted them for a year or whatever. You can't do anything. And so everybody is suffering. So I would think it's not going to happen quickly, and everybody says, oh, it's really difficult to do. So what? So what? Who cares? Who cares that it's difficult to do? If it's the right thing to do, and it's the best thing to do for our sport, So now we were worried about Australian rules. Yes, but Australian rules is played now and they're playing some night games. So, you know, that means there's 1 or 2 Aussie rules games on. We seriously think our sport was so fragile that we needed to be frightened of that. People are saying we needed to switch it so we have our talent available for the Olympics and not, you know, taking them out of Australian basketball. And that's one of the main reasons we have to be able to take away our best players. Well, the last Olympic team had 1 player from the National Basketball League and everybody else brought in that's playing outside of Australia. Because they're doing that, and then they're talking about European training camps. Am I the only one that thinks that is ridiculous? That is absolutely... How is that benefiting Australian basketball that the cream of our talent, the Olympic team that should be made up of the majority of players out of our National Basketball League, how do we do that? How do we think that these guys are just going to hang around and play on some sort of Mickey Mouse point system that just doesn't work? You want the strongest players possible. I think young Luke Martin, a young kid that I worked with for quite a while, a young player, terrific player, and has been in Australian basketball now for a few years. He couldn't go play in Sydney. There were a few other players that couldn't play in Sydney that were Sydney players, born and bred, that couldn't play there because their points would have put the team outside of the point system. We seriously I don't know that that even is legal. That's not infringement of trade? I don't know what is. But anyhow, I don't understand that. We want the best talent. People say, and now we've got a salary cap that is just ridiculous. You know, if you're going to have a salary cap, I've always believed that salary caps were a way of owners protecting themselves from themselves. But if we're really serious about it, start your salary cap at 800,000 and allow a team to spend between 800,000 and 3 million. Money doesn't win championships, I can guarantee you. Look at the United States, where the New York Yankees spend enough to run the entire Australian sporting program, you know, including paying everybody in the NFL and everywhere else if they wanted to, out of the New York Yankees. How many world championships have they won in the last decade? I think it's 1. You know, now they're always good and they're always competitive and they're always around the finals. And I dare say people spending a lot of money and doing it rightly in Australia are likely to be always around the finals. But it doesn't win championships, number 1. And number 2, if teams start spending a lot of money in developing powerhouses, the leagues get stronger and stronger when they've got legitimate rivalries. The Los Angeles Lakers and Boston Celtics, the Pistons and the Chicago Bulls. When you've got blood rivalries that are out there, developed by so-called blue-collar teams against the real money-making teams, Hollywood team of the Lakers against the blue-collar workers coming out of Boston, the Detroit team, the bang-you-around bad boys out of Detroit, pack buildings from one end of the country to the other with their style of basketball. Increase the salary cap, raise our expectations. We are lowering our expectations and trying to work out how we can be successful by spending as little as possible. And, we expect that also to be successful. How can that be? Raise our sights. Our expectations are too low. Australian basketball needs to be regarded as in the upper echelon of Australian sport. We need to find the money. We need to... You've just appointed me? I'm going to appoint my own CEO. I'm going to go straight after Damien Keogh. Probably would surprise everybody, including Damien Keogh. But I would go straight after Damien. You know, an Olympian, played for the Sydney Kings with great honour, played in Melbourne, came through the Melbourne junior programs, super successful in business, great marketing guy, obviously. Why wouldn't we have Damien there? We've burnt our talent on the business side. We've got people from every walk of life that have represented Australia in basketball that could be a huge asset to our game. We ignore them. We ignore them. We don't bring them all into the fold. Bobby Turner left after the Sydney Kings, and what is he doing now? He brought down 2 US baseball teams to play. My God, you know, look at what he's doing with baseball, raising the profile, raising money, increasing the expectations of young players and creating farm systems. We should have farm systems. One of the other things I would do immediately after I've spoken and got Damien Keogh appointed, I want to meet with the head of Basketball Australia. I really want to sit down with Anthony Moore and sit and talk to Anthony about the jewels in the crown of Australian basketball is the National Basketball League and the Women's National Basketball League. How do we tie all of these things together? How do we increase the profile of basketball? A lot of people throughout Australia are not aware at all of what Basketball Australia has done. I think Basketball Australia does a horrific job as far as talking about what they've achieved. Look at what they've done over the years. The Australian Institute of Sport, the academies throughout Australia in all of the different sports, the number of coaches that have come through AIS, Basketball Australia programs that are coaching at the top levels. How many coaches are we providing in China? How many Australian coaches and players, Americans that came to Australia that are now making a good living in China through what they developed in Australia? One of the best women's coaches of all time, Tommy Ma, coaching in China, living in China. You know, we're exporting talent everywhere and not working out how to retain it at home. We don't have the money to do it. We're not having the money to do it. Why? Because we're not bold enough to go out and chase it. How many businesses out there realise that we are the absolute giant of Australian sport in flexing our muscles with economic power? Do we do it? No. Do we give it any thought? Well, I don't think so. I've never seen it. We run around getting sponsors for our National Basketball League teams. How much help do we give the sponsor? We just take his money. We take their money. They put up their sign. They get a little bit on TV. Why don't we build their programs? Why don't we get a major sponsor that we say there's 10 games or 10 games on the weekend, 15 games going to be played on this current weekend that's coming up. And of those 15 games, you're going to reach X number of people. We can put a package on the seat of every person that comes in. We can give them material at the front door. If you were Cairns, why wouldn't Townsville have the local travel agencies, the local promotion people for the city of Townsville, for Cairns? What fantastic places to visit. What great places for a player to go play in for a couple of years. What beautiful centres. We don't promote those. If I was with Cairns, why wouldn't you when you play in Adelaide, when you go play in Perth, when you go play in Wollongong? Why wouldn't you hand out marketing material talking about, come visit Cairns, come see what you can do here, what a fantastic... Why don't we tie in promotions from one end of the country to the other? As far as games go, every team should have a set of rules, how they handle a game. We should be talking about scores throughout the league, at quarter time, at half time. We should be giving out information on top level players, what their numbers are like, what they're achieving, who's coming to town next week to play, who their superstars are. Get your ticket now. Any specials that are going on. We're not doing that. We're not out there in social media anymore. We don't have Rodney Overby when he was doing the sideline stuff in Sydney. I'm not saying this in any way that's detrimental, critical or whatever of what's happening in Sydney. It is what it is. Somebody like Rodney is a walking personal promotion machine. Everywhere he goes. He's the radio station. He's non-stop out there marketing Rodney and the things that Rodney likes. Rodney Overby would pay his way with the number of high-profile people that would roll along to watch the game in Sydney because they're going to head for the nearest nightclub after and party with Rodney. So why wouldn't we get Rodney involved? You know, to me, these things aren't that complicated. We can sort them out. We've got to bury our egos. You sit down with Tony Moore, get on a plane and fly around Australia and go visit everywhere together. I would go everywhere with Tony. We would talk to the basketball associations. We would put on media meetings in every capital city. We'll bring in the head of the administration. We go to Perth, bring in the CEO of Perth, bring the coach in. Sit there while we talk to the media about all of the fantastic things that our league are going to offer, what we're going to do in Perth. If Perth are booming like they are and we've got anything extra that we're going to do it there until somebody else can do it better. You know, we can do so much more than what we're doing. We've got to think hard about but we've got to raise our expectations. We've got to start going after serious money, serious business. Either we're going to regard ourselves as a second-rate sport and crumble and die, and there's some terrible signs to me that look like they're happening in Townsville, amongst a team that Sean Dennis has put together, a good quality team. They're working like crazy. When I was thinking seriously that there was an opportunity to go back to Adelaide, I was telling everybody that we'll probably have a high ticket price of $30. Nearly every seat in the place is going to sell for $20. Why would we do that? Why would we bring our prices down? Because it seats about 7,500. If I can bring in 150,000, not counting advertising and sponsorship per game, if I'm playing in Townsville and I'm playing in an arena that seats 2,000, I'm trying to charge 40 or 50 bucks, why not play in the main centre there that seats about 4,000, charge 20 to $25 and fill the building? The building would be full. To my mind, when I was general manager and talked to marketing people, advertising people, they really just want to see a full house. So if you're coming to the Adelaide Arena and you walk in there and you've got a box up the top and your advertising signage and some court signage, and it is packed. There are people outside that can't get into the building. The place is buzzing. You've got a live band, you've got your cheerleaders, you've got a constant hum of excitement and noise. Sponsors line up. You know, it's not a battle. Why wouldn't you approach the Crows? Why wouldn't you approach Port and create arrangements where we can do season ticket holder deals between the two groups? They get 30, 40, 50,000, 60,000 people to a game. You don't think that there's a spin-off of some of those people that love basketball? And we've only got to put in 7,500? What are we thinking about? There's hundreds of thousands of juniors stuck all over South Australia that would come if they were marketed the right way. Basketball Australia needs to get off its behind and start getting some excitement back to the sport. The next challenge should be, let's throw ourselves in for the next 5 years. That's what I'd be saying. I don't know whether I can last 5 years. That would be my goal if you want me to run the thing. But the bottom line is we've got to dramatically raise expectations. We've got to increase the money that's available dramatically to players. No club should ever be top-heavy administration versus players, ever. And I saw that developing a number of times in the 90s. It was already heading that way. We want trim, tight administration running a program. We do not need to be top-heavy. Television, sell ourselves to television by showing power of numbers. We're going cap in hand. You're prepared to accept anything. That's crap. Those days are gone. They should be gone. We are a major sport in the number 1 or 2 sport in the world. The president of FIBA is Bob Elphinston, a friend, a personal friend. I played basketball for Bobby. I helped with his coaching camps. One season in Sydney, Bobby took me halfway through a season when I'd run into one of my very early conflicts, and we won a Sydney championship prior to going to Newcastle and getting involved with John Rashke and winning a state championship. Bob Elphinston is president of FIBA, you know, ran an Olympic Games. Just being able to be with Bobby is an honour these days. To be able to talk to Bob, you know, about what he's seen and what he's done in the world of basketball is just magnificent. We want Bobby on side. We want Bob to help. Why wouldn't I sit down with Bob Elphinston and talk about our plans for the National League, the dates that we're looking at running them, and how do we fit perfectly into the international calendar? Do we need to condense our games? What do we need to do? And talking about that, and I'm sorry for rambling into different areas. That's what I do. We should play 48 minutes. We have to switch back to 48 minutes. Somebody told me that the reason they switched to 40 minutes is because when we lost moved television to whoever it was at the time, they wanted a shorter game. They wanted to condense it into a shorter time period. We have to play a 48-minute game. Number one, a lot of fans and new fans and parents that come along to watch their kids play, they're really impressed with 100-point games. 100-point games become pretty common when you've got an extra 8 minutes to play. That's number one. Number two, and most importantly, they come to see the top players. We want to give them the top players for as long as possible. A 48-minute game allows a lot more time, a lot more excitement, and a lot more people to see the best people play basketball. So we switch our seasons, we change the game to 48 minutes, we get rid of the restrictive point system, we dramatically raise the salary cap, and we go to the media with a concrete proposal about who we are. We don't need, in the short term, a lot of money from television. We want superb coverage that makes sure that we maximise the promotion of our sponsors. So if a guy advertising in Sydney knows that his market is going to expand right across the country because we are going to make sure that he's visible on television, that he has marketing material that's going to be distributed all across the country every time his team goes away, every time, and all of the various people that come online. And now there's one other thing that I would do. I'll speak to Peter Andrews here, who is a television giant in entertainment and sporting, particularly in black entertainment and sport, who knows absolutely everybody. We've already spoken to some people from Fox Sport, from ESPN Sport. We've already touched bases with different people there, and it's no problem to get face-to-face with those people. Let's break into the American market. And the American market would be available to us because it's we're out of season again. You know, so when we're playing, nobody else is. So there's a chance it's a very American-looking game, the way that we can do it. We've got to start setting better guidelines. We've got to make sure that court announcers and stuff do the job the way that everybody is fairly uniform with how they're going to promote it. We want the media, the TV people. I don't know who's coordinating these people in NBL TV. You've got to have a meeting with these people. I would sit everybody down and say, this is what we're looking at. This is what we're looking for. It's not up to a TV commentator to start questioning why the coach should or shouldn't put a certain player on the court, why they should be playing a zone or why they shouldn't, why they should be in a full court man-to-man. That's not the role of a commentator. That's the job of the coach. The people that are commentating on the game should tell the people what's happening, what the coach is trying to achieve, and that's it. Talk about the excitement of the play, who's doing what, any way you like. Talk about the referees. There's another subject, the referees. Let's get Mal Cooper in again. And Mal's a great guy, and he has really got his heart in the right place for what he's doing and the way he's approaching it. And he's got Billy Mildenhall on side and Ray Hunt. Who else do we want? Eddie Crouch? You know, we've got everybody there, the people that are really the keystones of Australian refereeing. I fail to understand why they're not still refereeing. Somebody said we stop people after 55 or something. We don't let them referee. You could wipe out half of the National Basketball Association referees here and a lot of college referees on an age restriction that we have in Australia. So I don't understand that. If that is accurate, I believe it is. But nevertheless, we've got to find a way, when we raise our money situation, we need a panel of referees that really should be full-time in the National Basketball League and in the Women's League if possible at the same time. And then Basketball Australia should be able to utilise these people at all of the various state level leagues, at top level leagues, at Australian club championships and team championships, major junior championships, and to be training other young referees. What have they got to aspire to? What have they got to aspire to? They want to be the best in Australia, they want recognition, they want to be able to do their job. They then want to be able to get onto the international stage. Put them in the National Basketball League. We've got to promote people through. Treat our league as a full professional league. Upgrade the refereeing status and expect much more from some of these referees. The standard of play is only going to keep moving ahead in positive ways if the standard of refereeing is high. They've got to, we've got to create a situation again where the people realise we're in this together. I was the person that brought in the 48-minute rule, so I know that I really like it in the first place, and the 16 fouls, and a lot of other things that we have in the game I agitated for. I was the coach, just so as people understand, that argued for 4 years for a restriction on imports. And I did that. We settled on 2 per team on the basis that our goal was to develop Australian talent and to bring in American players and American talent to help us achieve our ultimate goal, and that is to raise Australia to the top levels of international basketball. I couldn't see how we could do that when I was coaching St Kilda. I had the only All-Australian team, and I'm coaching against 5 Americans a team with 3 or 4 teams, with 5 Americans on the court. To watch a game in the semi-finals of the Australian Club Championship with 10 Americans on the court, I thought this is ludicrous, and fought against it. I fought the entire power structure for 3 or 4 years to get that done. We all take that sort of thing for granted now. It was brought in to raise the standard of Australian players, to give Australians the best opportunity. And look at some of the players that we brought in early on, with Leroy Loggins, Al Green, Mark Day, on and on and on. I mean, it's unfair to name a 3 when you could name 20, 25 people that came in and played a huge role in the development of our game. And look at the Australian talent that developed through that same period of time. We can get serious sponsorship money. There's no doubt about it. It's how we project ourselves. If we sound like we're poor relatives, that's what we'll be treated like. If we go into a television studio begging for it, instead of going in and showing what we have. When they understand the economic power of basketball, it will no longer be a problem, but we're not selling that. We're going in as if we're, again, please, please, please. Now, we need television, there's no doubt about it, but don't tell me that there aren't enough options now, that we can't flex a little bit of muscle to prove who we are, when in the United States, the television deal next year in the NBA is going to be $1 trillion. It's big. Basketball is big on television in Russia, in China, everywhere it's played, in Singapore. Why don't we have a major international tournament at the end of our league? Can you imagine a tournament with Perth playing in that same tournament, maybe the Adelaide Arena with those two back-to-back games with 2 teams from the United States and 2 from Asia, made for television, and then take our show on the road, go do that in Singapore, a country that's oozing, bleeding money, and go play in casinos in other places? We can do all of that. All of that's there. I could take us into an international league, I could take us into television contracts in the United States, raise our profile across Australia. I would talk to the all of the leading Australian rules coaches. I would love to talk to them again. Get them back where we want them to be. Supporters of basketball. Bring them to our games. Bring media people from all over the media spectrum. Invite them to our games. Make them feel important. Let them go away singing our praises. Not shut them out. I knew shutting them out, it's going to be a disaster if something goes wrong. Same people you meet on the way up, you might meet on the way down. The problem is, on the way down, if you've treated them badly on your way up, they'll kick your head right off the first chance they get, and that's what's happened. So now, that's what I'd do. I'd stir the whole country up. I'd go from state to state. I'd do press conferences everywhere we went. I'd bring in major sponsors in all of these areas. I'd bring in the coach and the general manager of the local team. I'd bring in the head of Basketball Australia. I will scream the Basketball Australia mantra from rooftop to rooftop, from one end of the country to the other. Look what Basketball Australia has done for the sport in Australia, and they are the passionate believer in turning the National Basketball League and the Women's National League into the #1 sports opportunity in basketball in the world outside of the NBA. Why can't we do that? That's what we should be striving for. We make friends with the media well and truly. We bring everybody we can on side. We go to the politicians and show our power. Flex our muscles, not go begging. We are a powerhouse sport with millions of people that have played and participated in a weekly basis, and we don't think we can fill 10,000 to 15,000 in an arena. We should put that in anywhere we want to play the game. We should be able to put those people in. It's just up to us. How good do we want to get? Within 1 year, I would have 10 teams in the National Basketball League. All 10 teams may not get their home court featured on television until they can put one that's of sufficient standard. You cannot play in a building any longer like that court up there in Townsville, bless their heart, as hard as they're trying, that's got one little row of seats behind the basket. A blank wall. My goodness me, what are you thinking? Paint the wall, do something. But those people right behind the basket, people walking under the basket when a player's shooting foul shots, that's Bush League. Get rid of it. Move into that other building, and if you can't afford to move in, I hate to say it, you're out of the league. You know, you've got the team, you've got a good coach, quality players, quality team, play in a quality arena that raises the standard of everywhere. The money is there in Townsville if you believe that it is. And the league needs to get behind it. Basketball Australia gets behind it. If I'm head of the National Basketball League, my job is to help every team achieve its goals, whatever they want. You're going to try and back it up and support it, and you're going to work hand in hand, non-stop with Basketball Australia, because at the end of the day, we all want exactly the same thing. We want to keep our talent there as much as we can. We want to establish our credentials on the world stage as best we can, and we want to watch this sport achieve the greatness that it deserves. There's enough people out there. In my advisory board, I'm going to bring in basketball people. But we've already got Calvin Bruton down there in Canberra that can definitely bring a team to the table. Brian Curl up there in Brisbane can definitely bring a team to the table. We're not using people like Ray Borner, Luke Longley, people now that should be involved heavily in the marketing and promotion of the National Basketball League. Tell people how great we are, how great we're going to be, what we can do for our youth, what we can do as a positive image for our country internationally, and how this game is a beautiful game that teaches people how to live life, how to learn about life, learn about yourself, learn your strengths, learn your weaknesses, maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. Teaches you how to get along with other people, teaches you how to build relationships, hopefully teaches you how to raise your children, how to create better goals, better standards for our society. That would be my goal. So I'll come do it, not quite for free. You have to fly me everywhere and you have to take care of some costs, but I'd come do it, and I'll tell you, it'll take 2 years. We'll take 2 years and we'll be back to the winter season, 48-minute games, and everything will be flowing, money will be free, and we will be seriously ranked as in the top echelon of sports in our country and looked upon with non-stop pride. So there's a lot of other things that I could probably jump in and jump on about, but I hope you get a chance to look at this for what it is, and it creates enough opinion out there. But let's start getting some serious basketball people back into the top levels. Surround ourselves with high quality people, and we can't do anything but succeed. And let the business people and some of the people running the clubs call us and ask us, how can we play a part in helping you get stronger? That's all it should be. The management of the National League should be just, how do we help the clubs get stronger and stronger? How do we work with the governing body that they continue to get credit for what they've done and give us the credit that we need to be rated the top sport that we are. So thank you very much, and let's see where we go from there. I'm ready to start work the first week in January. Thanks everyone.